I remembered a quote from late Charlie Munger that the secret of happiness and a successful marriage is low expectations. So I think this is
Exactly.
exactly what happened with Apple, that, people going in were like so pessimistic that any bit of good news was just hailed with, the stock reaction that you're seeing right now.
So, Anurag, I guess before the print, you were talking about what you really want to hear regarding China and their business in China was stabilization. Did you hear that?
In fact, he said they were doing very good in China, which is contrary to every data that's out there. In fact, a couple of analysts asked him that, like, how do you reconcile with all this data on shipments being down versus your comments in China? He's like, I'm not responsible for them, but we are doing okay in China. So it's a big dichotomy right now in the market as to who to believe, whether the third-party data providers that are talking about a massive decline in iPhones versus Apple that's saying China is okay.
Did you like them spending the $110 billion on a buyback? I'm guessing you didn't because Paul was into it.
No, actually, to be very frank, they spend over about 100 billion right now. So the 110 is a minor upgrade. The real news would have been if they said they're going to do about 150, frankly. So I think I know the headline number looks really big, but they do already spend currently close to $100 billion buying back, their shares. So I mean, I like it. There's no problem about it. But I think that's not really what got the stock going. The fact that they said that they're going to grow in low single digits after about around close to a 200 basis points impact on FX. That's, I think, the biggest news at this point.
Hey, Anurag, I guess their developer conference coming up in June is going to be big for Apple. From an AI perspective, what will you be looking for at that conference?
So, I mean, my personal preference would be if they do a tie-up with Google and use Google's model to run some of those stuff, because there is a big unknown out there as to what's going to happen between their relationship with Google when it comes to the default search engine, and Google, supposedly pays them $20 billion for it. I think that's under a lot of regulatory scrutiny. If Apple were to refine and do another deal with Google where they can, mix both those things, it'll really help their AI costs, because I don't think organically they can do something this quickly. There are news by Mark Gurman that they're going to either tie up with Google or OpenAI. My preference would be if they tie up with Google over there.
So what is that risk for Apple from Google?
It is there, but to be honest, it's a one or a zero, which means there's no way to predict which way the judge is going to go. But I also feel that if this does come down to that, some kind of a legal issue, the two parties are willing to pay each other, or there is a transaction there, so they'll find another way to make it look less like that, a payment for default search engines, maybe per click, or there could be some economics there, but it is a headline issue, at least in the near term for Apple.
I have to say, Anurag, you do not seem that thrilled, or that you don't seem that thrilled after Apple's quarter.
No, that's not true. I mean, I'm very happy with the results.
You seem skeptical.
I'm actually relieved.
Skeptical. How about that?
No, no, not at all. I'm relieved of what happened from last night. I just need to get to some of these one or two different things that are pending. Because, see, at the end of the day, Apple is one of the most phenomenal companies right now. There is nobody with an ecosystem that's stronger in the retail world or in the consumer world. But the question is, how do they get back to the growth rate, and can they get rid of some of the regulatory hangups right now? Their fees is under a lot of pressure, both in EU and perhaps even in the US. So there are a few things. It's not a clear-cut story as a Microsoft or an Amazon or an NVIDIA at this point. There are certain things that need to be cleaned up. But I'm always a big fan of Apple. Nothing about it.